Ernest McDuffie. I'm the lead for the National Initiative for Cybersecurity Education.
Zhang, Computer Science Department and College of Staten Island, City University of New York.
So this is kind of different. You got to go back at least one administration. The Bush administration actually started a thing called CNCI. It's a Comprehensive National Cybersecurity Initiative. That was a federally focused initiative, mostly classified. There were actually 12 different parts to that initiative. We're really doing a lot of important things, trying to get the federal government's mind wrapped around what's going on in cyberspace and what needs to be done. So when the Obama administration came on board, they looked at CNCI and realized how important it was, and in fact, so important that it needed to be expanded. Instead of being federally focused and classified, let's make it nationally focused and declassify much of it as possible. CNCI 8 was the education piece of that, and NICE inherited everything that was ongoing under CNCI 8. So we're really not a new bureaucracy. We're really kind of a coalition of the willing. All federal agencies, we probably have about 22 really solid partners now across federal government in this space that are working with Homeland Security, Department of Defense, NIST, Department of Commerce, Department of Labor, National Science Foundation, Department of Education, and the list kind of goes on and on. All of us kind of pulling together to address this problem, which is bigger than the federal government itself and really needs as many public-private partnerships as possible. One of the best examples, I think, of a long-term partnership between academia and government is the Centers of Academic Excellence in Information Assurance Education. So this is a designation given out by NSA and DHS jointly. It's been around for about 17 years now, 18 years this year, as a matter of fact. When it started, there were only a handful, maybe 5 or 6 schools across the country who qualified for that designation. It's a pretty rigorous process that they take you through in terms of mapping your curriculum to certain standards, making sure you have the right qualified faculty members there, and other resources at your university so that you can produce the kind of students that are needed in the workforce. That program has expanded now. There's some 182 schools across the country that have that designation. And part of the collaboration with government is a scholarship for service program that the National Science Foundation runs that uses the CAE program as one of the qualifiers for a school to compete for the scholarship money. That scholarship for service program has been around for about 12 years now. It's had like a 95% success rate in terms of students who get the scholarship. 95% of them complete their degree and complete their 2-year obligation to work for the federal government. Part of the goal of that program was to have students become lifelong federal employees. Some 70% of those students who are in that program are still working for the federal government. So it's been very successful. It's more of a partnership. Yeah, this is where the partnership comes in. When we develop standards, education training standards, we do it in conjunction with people from academia. The government doesn't, particularly in the NICE environment, we don't do anything in isolation. Our first move is to go out and get subject matter experts from industry, from academia, and from government all together at the table to discuss what are our best practices, what do you need on your side, what do you produce on your side, how can we bring that all together so that it's a win-win for everybody. So the standards are set at the federal level, but they're set not in a vacuum. They're set under guidance and input from academia and industry.
The big challenge with the government is we are, like you said, we are work with some kind of standard accreditation. For example, in my college, our computer science degree was accredited by ABET. And when we have a internal initiative to try to develop a new curriculum, we are looking at on the ABET for the academia accreditation. Also, we're looking for the job market, including federal government sector, to see what kind of job skill and will be marketable for students. So that is the place where I think can be great help. And the barriers, I think, the communication that and the link establishes that a close working relationship link. When I gave a first assignment to my student, for example, I'm teaching a computer hacking class this term, is white hat hacking, ethical hacking. One of the assignment I gave them is, what do you want to learn from this class? Why you take this class? The question come back is interesting is a lot of them are students saying is aware of cyber security is a paramount threat and at the national level, at the institution level, and even at personal level. So they want to know more about what's going on and what they can learn and prepare them for that either professional or just general awareness is something that they should pay attention. And they should tell their friends, their family about it. There's certain things you should do and certain things you shouldn't do. Some of them know. For example, some of the students I encountered one or two, they tell me, they said, even though I'm not going to graduate, I'm not graduated yet, within a year I'm going to get my clearance checked. So I'm intending to go to government sector, working on government agencies that is related with cybersecurity. But the majority of them don't have a clear goal. In our college, we have a special career center guide them to plan a career path. But I'm not sure how much they done on cybersecurity. This is a relatively new field. So I sometimes I'm more like personal counseling with the students.
So it's already happening. Part of the Scholarship for Service program that I mentioned, they mandate an internship between the first and second year. These internships typically take place at the federal agency that's going to hire them ultimately. So during that period, assuming that the intern is interested in actually pursuing a career and the agency likes what they see, they can start the clearance process then, which is a full year before they graduate. 18 months is probably the worst case scenario, how long it takes. It's really kind of dependent on what kind of life you've led up to that point. If you've lived a lot of places around the world, they actually do due diligence and go check all those places where you lived and look to people who knew you there. So if you were a military brat and lived all over the place, it could take a long time for a clearance, whereas if you just grew up in one town, never went anywhere, you can get clearances done relatively quickly. And also it depends on the level. If you're going for a top secret special access, that takes a lot of time, a lot of background. But typically the entry level clearance is just a secret level clearance, which can be done anywhere from 3 to 6 months. And the process has gotten better. There's bureaucracy involved. There were a number of different federal agencies that were involved in the clearance process. They've now kind of streamlined that. And of course, it's a resource dependent. How many investigators do you have applied to the number of people applying for the clearances? If you double the number of investigators, you might halve the amount of time. But of course, that's a trade-off that we're always kind of dealing with, how many resources to apply to it. So I think the biggest challenge, the biggest way to mitigate that challenge is that if you know that one of the things you want to do is to work for a federal agency that's going to require a clearance, is to start investigating those kind of internship opportunities through the university. A lot of times they have good contacts with agencies that are providing that, whether it be at a private sector company or not, and have them know that you're serious about this and let's get the security clearance process going. In the federal government, you can't do a clearance on a person unless there's an actual position requiring them to have a clearance. So it's almost like a catch-22. You know, we can't start clearing people unless we know down the road that we're actually going to hire you. So there's a lot of moving pieces in place that complicate the process. Yeah, I believe so. I think as we were talking about in the workshop, a lot of the cutting edge science now is only happening at federal laboratories, you know, whether it's a Los Alamos or Oak Ridge, or the Navy has a whole system of what they call warfare centers, which employ primarily civilian scientists and engineers that are working on virtually everything in the whole STEM umbrella in terms of things that apply to naval warfare, and really are doing some cutting edge basic research across those laboratories. So those are the places. The Naval Research Laboratory across the river here does tremendous work. NIST, where I work, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, we have Nobel Prize winners walking the hallway every day. So it's a real working laboratory. It really feels much more like a college campus at my job than it does like a federal bureaucracy. Every federal agency has a cybersecurity aspect to it. So there's really no agency that you could not work for because you were focused in cyber. It's true in the federal government, some 2/3 of all the cybersecurity professionals work for DoD. It's not necessarily about blowing things up, particularly if you're in some of the softer skill areas like intelligence analysts, language specialists, cultural anthropology, where you're trying to get inside the mindset of the bad guys. It's really an analytic thing. And so, it becomes attractive to a lot of people for a lot of different reasons. There's lots of different really cutting edge science, crowdsourcing, social media aspects that are really cutting edge, state of the art stuff that's happening that are being used and exploited by the three-letter agencies and a number of quasi-military and all of that. So there's a wide range of activities going on within the federal government and outside. I think a lot of the issues around intellectual property protection, identity theft, critical infrastructures that go well beyond the federal government, state, local, tribal, territorial governments have the same issues that we have at the federal level, except maybe the national security aspect, and those issues are across private sector as well. So lots of different avenues where you can exercise your talents without blowing things up.
On the federal side, I think President Obama have the cybersecurity initiative that require partnership and participation a lot of private sectors, especially we mentioned the energy sector, financial sector. Those companies also starting to look ahead, saying what kind of people we need to be able to implement some of the guidelines come from that initiative. Now they are starting, that's the market, the job market. There's a demanding on private sector, also looking for that type of skills.